Hey friends, in our water cycle video yesterday, you got to see the water cycle in action. It was actually raining and you got to see how it was collecting on the ground. So that was pretty cool. Now today, you're going to get to see the water cycle in action again, but that's because we're going to do an experiment to test one of the steps of the water cycle, the next step that comes after collection. So if you remember from yesterday's video, I talked about, well actually, how about I show you a picture of the poster of the water cycle as a reminder. So yesterday we got to see precipitation happening. That was when the rain was coming down out of the sky. And I showed you an example of collection when you got to see the puddle on the ground. So the next step in the water cycle is called evaporation. So like I said, when it gets warmer outside or when the sun starts to heat things up, evaporation happens. The sun heats up the water, turns it into something called water vapor. And water vapor is a gas. And if you remember from when we talked about states of matter, gases expand to fill any room. So if you think about the outside, it doesn't really have any walls. So it just expands to fill the air. And then it goes up and collects to make the clouds. We'll talk a little bit more about the clouds with our experiment tomorrow. But before we do the experiment to show evaporation today, I want to read you a little bit about it. So this short book is called Evaporation. Where does it go? It rains all night long, then the rain stops. Everything is wet. The sun comes out, the water goes away. It seems like magic. Where does it go? It's not magic, it is evaporation. The water evaporates. It changes from a liquid to a gas. So this says rain makes things wet. The sun helps dry the rain. Evaporation. Evaporation happens when a liquid becomes a gas. Water is a liquid. Air is made up of gases. The water changes its form. It becomes part of the air. So this says wind and high temperatures make water evaporate faster. So that's why in the summer when it rains, sometimes if it's a really hot day, the water puddles won't even last the whole rest of the day. A liquid is made of tiny parts called molecules. You can't see them. They may escape from the liquid. That's when evaporation happens. The molecules in a liquid move around. They move fast when they get hot, and they bump into each other. The molecules on top might get bumped off. They turn into a gas. So these are a couple examples of evaporation. So like when you have a kettle and you see that coming out of it, that's water vapor. That's very hot water vapor or steam. Liquid that gets very hot evaporates fast. Cold liquid evaporates slowly. So it says desert heat evaporates water quickly. Animals who live there must drink water whenever they can find it. So this says, fun fact, if a liquid gets so cold that it freezes, then it becomes a solid. But we already knew that because we talked about the 3 states of matter. Liquid that evaporates becomes a gas. We can always see the liquid, but sometimes we can't see the gas. Sometimes it's hot, but evaporation is slow. That's because the air is already full and there's not much room for more gas. Wind also helps liquid evaporate. Big wind means fast evaporation. So this says, fun fact, did you ever shake your hands to dry them? It works because of evaporation. And now, what does that look like? The water cycle. Evaporation is part of the water cycle. The water cycle is how water changes. It changes its form. The water cycle is important to life on Earth. Water on Earth evaporates, then it condenses. It may fall to Earth as rain or snow. Then it evaporates again. This happens again and again. Evaporation is just one part of the cycle, but the cycle would not work without it. The end. All right, so now I'm going to get to show you the really cool experiment that we're going to do to show evaporation. So stay tuned, you're going to see it and it's really fun. Hey everyone, so as promised, I'm going to show you a quick experiment that shows evaporation. Now remember, evaporation is the step in the water cycle that comes after collection. The collected water on the ground from the rain, it evaporates because of the sun's heat. The sun heats it up, turns it into water vapor, and it rises into the sky. Now, this actually happened recently. If you remember our video from yesterday, I told you that I recorded that on Sunday because it was a rainy day. Now, the next day, if you went outside and it was super sunny, you probably noticed that most of the puddles were gone. So I'm going to just show you a really quick evaporation experiment. Now, of course, if you want to try this experiment or any of the experiments that I post, please ask a grown-up to help you first, okay? So this only takes a couple of supplies. So I'm going to show you what supplies we're going to use. So like I said, this experiment does not take very many supplies. All we're going to use for this is some vanilla, like you would bake with, a plate to put it on, and a hair dryer or something else that gives off air and heat. So now we're going to actually do the experiment. I'm going to take my vanilla and my plate, and I am just going to put like I was going to say the tiniest drop of vanilla on the plate, but we'll do what we can with this. Okay, so we have a little more than a tiny drop of vanilla on here, but we're going to figure it out. It just won't be as fast. Okay, so now we have our hair dryer. So in our book today, it talked about how wind actually helps evaporation happen faster. So this is going to be kind of like wind and sun, the heat from the sun. So I'm going to show you. Now, if you and a grown-up do this on your own, be careful because the vanilla might come off of the plate, but we're going to try really hard to make it stay on the plate. And I also have it on hot. Okay, now you probably noticed I set the plate down after a couple minutes. That's because the plate started to get really hot. So if you and a grown-up do this at home, please do it with the plate sitting down. The only reason I was holding it was so you guys could see, okay? So the reason that we use vanilla instead of water is because vanilla has a little bit of color to it. And when the liquid evaporates, the color stays behind. So I want to show you what our plate looks like now. Look at that. So you can still see the color where the vanilla was, but the liquid evaporated. And I'll show you that it evaporated. Because look, if it was a liquid, it would come off. When I touch it, it stays there. The color of the vanilla just stayed behind. The liquid all evaporated. It kind of seems like it's a magic trick, but it's not magic. It's just evaporation. The hair dryer heated up the liquid and turned the liquid of the vanilla into water vapor. And now that water vapor is in my air somewhere, because remember, a gas will expand to fill any room. I hope you guys like this science experiment and stay tuned for the next one where we talk about condensation. Bye.